she's addressing the crowd, but she's
Okay.
also addressing like a non-entity who's a group of people coming with her,
Okay.
and you need to like give them. You need to put life into them. Like she needs to talk to them about something that's not happening with these four, like
Okay.
five people. Like someone among them can have a weird habit, or someone could have a strange personality trait that a Taurus has something, but
Okay.
it and then you have to narrate the physicality of the movie from space to space, or else it's kind of screwing with the passage of time. You know what I mean?
Okay. Okay. Like the continuity of the whole thing?
Right. So you have to, and it's not like you got to add a whole lot more dialogue or monologue to her, but
Hmm.
um, but these are things that she has to do because she's the only timekeeper in this,
Okay.
and she's the only space keeper too. Because if it's moving along in these spaces, and she's describing the spaces well, she's also has to put a little bit more information about how time has passed, or,
Okay.
or things that happen as time passes, so you get the stretch that this is a really really long ass day,
Okay.
and
Gotcha.
it'll help block your story too, and not put mm, you have so much happening in your story, but
Hmm.
it she's not building, she's the one responsible for building that up, not the characters, and
Okay.
she's that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, it definitely makes sense. My first reaction is I feel like this narrator is pretty loquacious as it is. So I feel like in order to do that, we have to find out how to do what you're talking about, blocking space and time and directing the imaginary characters and giving them a character without making it longer, but maybe even taking some of it out in order to leave room for what you're talking about. Does that sound right?
Kinda. She's super chatty, but in actuality, the way it's written, the structure, she's the main character.
Okay. Okay.
And even though she's not really doing anything except being nosy, but
Okay.
she's telling you, she's literally telling you where to look. She's giving
Okay.
hints of character development. She
Okay.
she's setting the tone of not just like the places where they are, but how you should feel. She's telling you how you should feel about these spaces. And
Okay.
so in all of that, that makes her the main character. So it's okay that
Okay.
she happens to have a big ass mouth, but
Okay.
she also um is sort of spatially and chronologically unaware. Um
Gotcha.
and that's something you have to be careful of when you're working in like scripts that
Hmm.
have minimalist sort of like staging. You know,
Okay.
your narrator is your number one.
And
So
are you saying now the first question you asked me was if we're taking to this to the stage, are you saying this is an issue that becomes more of an issue once we take it to the stage?
it depends on how you stage it. Like I think if you're doing minimalist staging,
Hmm.
um then the lift is really more on her. But I
Okay.
think you address it within the context of the script, and if you do perform it, like physically perform it, you have to have a she has to be your strongest person.
Okay.
Um, you'll be all right, and
Okay.
someone who can like who you and the person who's writing it feels really comfortable with her ad libbing, but if it's over the top, even the slightest bit, it'll be super annoying.
Hmm.
So it's I think it's best for you and the person writing to address that in the script, and then whomever physically plays that
Hmm.
understands that.
Okay.
So if that wouldn't be a place to get just anybody to read it.
Sure, sure. And the issues that you're addressing, do you think that those also occur in the way that we're doing it as a pod play, it being read, or is it okay the way it is now?
It's 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 at a this has 10 potential and now it's like at a 7.5, 8.
Okay.
And it could be a 10 really, really easily.
By
Um
addressing these issues that you're talking about?
mhm.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
And
Do
I
you have time or capacity, like either on a separate document or in the edit, like, or in the, like, do you have capacity to try to take that on to address those issues in writing?
I'd like to. I can't make that promise because I'm
Okay.
backlogged on a few things, but I would like to, and that's why I was like, let me just say it now
Okay.
because I keep saying I'm gonna do it, and I don't
Right.
do it. But
Okay.
I would, I would like to, but I can't promise that. But I think, um, if that was something you guys got started on, the next time I pick it up, I could do. If I'm not actively reading, I could do it
Hmm.
real time. But
Okay.
it's to do when I'm actively like reading it for a VO part, um
Hmm.
because I'm more anticipating and playing off whomever I'm listening to.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, I figured maybe even like on time when we're not reading, but yeah, if you can do that live, that's great too. So yeah, I
Yeah,
definitely appreciate those notes.
of
Because yeah,
course.
the way that you read all the characters, I was like, this is a person that's definitely can do any of the parts. And have you ever directed or anything like that? Have you ever directed other actors or people on the stage or anything?
Oh, that's a lifetime ago. Yeah,
Okay.
but that's that was a very long time ago, and
Okay.
I did a little bit of it. When I used to stage shoots, like photo
Hmm.
shoots, and I would help with staging and props and costumes once when I was teaching.
Okay.
And I always, now as an ethnographer, I'm moving into visual storytelling. That's what experimental ethnography is. So
Mhm.
it's where my research and theory kind of meet art. And
Okay.
so yeah, I have the full capacity to do it. And I also, because I've been writing so long, I can hear it and see it when I read it and know that that's going to trip you up with your audience later,
Mhm.
especially doubly if this is going to be a story that you build on.
Right.
Yeah, you
And what is the visual like? So what is ethnography and what's the visual component that you're doing? Like describe the work that you're doing again.
sure. So ethnography in general, um it's kind of like immersive anthropological research. You
Hmm.
are a participant in what you're studying in a way that's non-obstructive.
Okay.
So the people that you're studying and analyzing, they're very conscious of your presence and they probably will engage you, but you do as little as possible to change anything.
Okay.
And you're sort of reporting some level of a dynamic 360 plus because you're a part of it. And so you're hyper aware of both what's happening as far as external of you and your input, and then internally what you might react to based on your ideas and assumptions. um and that's just the practice in general. So it's a way we sort of derive culture from these things. But
Okay.
experimental ethnography is taking that data that comes from ethnographic research, um, and putting it into some sort of art form. So some people do it with film. It's like the next step past documentary filmmaking. Film,
Okay.
music, or visual art. My piece I'm working on is all of it. It's immersive art. So some of it's participatory. Um,
Hmm.
most ethnographers like the ones, the couple of studies that I've done, you know, we're asking strategic questions because we're arriving at some you know, supporting some theory we have about something. Um,
Okay.
and so that's what I'm doing.
Okay.
But
And so does that mean that you're going into communities and like engaging people on certain subjects and like recording data, or what does that
it,
mean like?
and on the broader scope, usually you do, yeah.
Mhm.
It's, again, it's immersive, and so and in your immersion, you're taking whatever you're writing. That's how your field notes are written, like the
Okay.
way the narrator is describing the neighborhood and the bakery and all the things. You
Mhm.
know, that's your job as an ethnographic storyteller, is to
Okay.
the person reading it into the world of, you know, that individual or group or typology of individuals or animals or whatever it is that you're studying. um,
Okay.
Mostly I do people.
Cool.
but
Cool.
yeah, and so, you know, for me specifically, um and I may kick myself for this later, I'm casting my net really broadly. My Because I ask really intimate questions, I always want to speak to people one on one. You
Okay.
know, most of the time I'm talking to people about, you know, trauma or things ideas they have about their body, or if they like themselves, or, you know, this is
Mhm.
personal stuff. You're not just
Yeah.
gonna Skype. So tell me, you know. But some people do it and they still just divulge everything.
Sure.
Um, but my first desire count is small, so I was hoping to catch 12 people locally here and a group in the city,
Mhm.
and I have several different ones going on,
Okay.
but I'm casting the net nationally because I can, and
Okay.
just to see what I get. I don't think that the the data that I'm seeking is relative to a geography, although in some regard it could be. You never know till you really get it back. So,
Mhm. Cool.
yeah,
Cool. That's
yeah.
dope.
Thank
That's
you.
dope.
Thank you.
Yeah. I like that. So you're finding some parallels between the work that you do and the narrator of this story. Is
All,
that
yeah, oh, of course. All ethnographic writers with their salt are story. We're storytellers. That's what we
right?
do.
Cool.
Um, and some do it better than others, obviously. You know, and then you have theorists who think we're a joke.
Okay.
You know, because we are storytellers, but I mean, that's the foundation of culture, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. This is interesting that you talk about this because I'm in a text group with like a cousin, that I saw from time to time growing up, like close friend. His mom's like close friends with my mom, so not technically cousins, but we, for all intents and purposes, we're cousins. But we're in this text
Mhm.
group based on like hip hop. It's like called Beats or something, and
Oh,
people drop music in there that they like that other people may not have heard. But I think I may have dropped a clip of the Book of Clarence in there.
oh, did you see it?
I have not seen it yet. Have you seen it?
No, I can't wait to, actually, because I want to talk about it.
Yeah, yeah. So we should. That could be a follow up. So we're talking about it before seeing it now. We could follow up. So it quickly kind of emerged into talk about religion and the treatment of Jesus and stuff like that.
Mm.
And someone in there was like very religious and skeptical of the treatment of Jesus and said something about him being a joke or somewhat to the effect of a charlatan. And I was like, well, that's Clarence that they're talking about, right? That's not Jesus. If anything, this person may be like some kind of false Messiah or something, and it's another story. And he kind of goes into, well, they should focus on Jesus and not like blah blah blah. And I'm like, but according to the Bible, weren't there many false messiahs? Like, isn't this another story that would have been a part of the whole thing? So I
That's
came at it from a very storytelling perspective that I thought it was fascinating, interesting, and like, why shouldn't it be like funny and engaging and interesting? And like, my mind started going into like how maybe like the markets were like what would be like the barber shop today, where people are going, talking, gossiping, finding out what's happening, trying to figure out what is what, telling their conspiracy theories. Like in my mind, I'm trying to make it as present as possible, right? Because people, when they think about the past, they think about something slow and boring and like something they can't really relate to. So in my mind, I'm like trying to make it relate. So I'm like, no, this could be a fascinating, pretty dope story.
well, one of my subfields is religion and spirituality. I would love to talk about that. And people, this is not, this is admittedly the worst word I could use, but
Mhm.
I have another one.
Okay.
People are hypersensitive about uh,
Mm.
Christ in a
Yes.
way that doesn't allow among, and I'm talking about among believers,
Hmm. Hmm.
in a way that doesn't allow this sort of casual, fun, or even intellectual exchange about how we really feel about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's something that's drawn along culture lines. So I there's, speaking of ethnography, so
Hmm.
I wrote a commentary for a book. Um, this was my first commentary for a textbook in anthropology. It came out last summer, summer before last. It was comparative religion, about ideas on Christendom, specifically Pentecostalism, between among blacks and white congregations.
Okay.
And um, among that, we saw a lot of different ideas about, uh, of course, my own, and then looking at, contrast between um, racial dynamics and how we regard Christ.
Hmm.
And, it's pretty interesting how we align, we still continue to align like types of bondage or trauma to liberating ideologies.
Hmm.
I mean, if you really think about it, and it's nothing to really think about, Christ was the big social political liberator, right?
Yeah. I mean, I take it further than that and say he was a socialist,
Yes,
right?
he was.
Yeah. Yeah,
And so
if not communist, which we dare use that word because that's been, so demonized in
it's
modern
true.
day society.
It's true. And I would like to believe a lot of the things that we slap people in the mouth for saying, he would have engaged in conversation in.
For sure, for
And
sure.
that don't, and I double down on saying I don't think he would feel it would compromise his divinity one bit by doing so.
Right,
And yet in this contemporary, it's 2023, many years later, and we do that. We do the opposite of what he came to liberate us from.
right. Well, imagine the fact that people would either dismiss or get upset. Not saying that this happened in the chat, but just in
Okay.
general, imagine me calling Christ a communist, which is probably better than using the word socialist because it's even more of a charged word, and it's
Right.
also good alliteration, communist Christ. But
Yeah.
imagine people not taking that seriously when the word is literally give up all your worldly possessions and follow me, and it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom of heaven. Imagine not taking that seriously, um, and like demonizing those ideas.
The one thing you're told to do, like clearly, like
Yeah,
it's really laughable, and
yeah, it is.
it's laughable, but then at the same time, it makes me kind of cry because uh, I think spiritually, it means a lot of people miss the boat of the type of freedom that can come
Hmm.
um, from from having a spiritually centered life.
Right.
And but I think as humans, that's a part of our frailty, really, and we're constantly seeking to find these edges because we think we can hide in them.
Right.
We're very, very afraid of true liberation, and I think we conflate that with escapism, or
Mm-hmm.
that some sort of I don't know, uh uh riotous type of living to be liberated.
Yeah. Well, we
You
also we also like to look back at history and say what we would have done and make everything like it's so easy. Like, oh, if I was, if I lived back then,
know,
I wouldn't have gone along with the Nazis or whatever. But we see a lot of things happening today that mirror those things, even though it's kind of a faux pas to ever compare anything to that. People hate analogies, unfortunately, so we can't learn from them. Or if I was back in the slavery days, I would have like escaped or this or that, or like the whole Kanye aspect of things. And I always try to bring things back to like analogies that make sense to me. Like if someone told me that they escaped prison, maybe I could believe that that person could have maybe escaped from slavery. Like, all right,
right?
you've at least shown the ability to escape from an institution where people have way more power than you, and and weapons, and like the power to put you to death. Like, okay, that kind of makes sense. But if you haven't done that, or if you're like, if you've ever sat in a jail cell or a prison and not escaped, then you can't really tell me what you would have done.
And the conjecture is kind of insulting
Yeah.
because I don't think the average person really has a mind to understand the effect of the the physicality of being physically oppressed in that way,
Yeah. Yeah,
and
for
the
sure.
toil that takes on your psyche.
Yeah.
So we rely more on sensory experiences than we think we do when it comes
Hmm.
to sort of taking account of things situationally.
Yeah.
And until someone has actually endured let's put it mildly, the discomfort
Hmm.
of 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 hard labor, like
Right.
legitimately hard agrarian labor,
Hmm.
right? Then tell me about your ideas about liberation after that. Like,
Right.
compounded with what happens, literally what physically happens to the brain when you're very conscious that you have no hope in changing your situation. You have
Yeah.
zero autonomy.
Yeah, for sure. For
That
sure.
that shifts your whole chemical thinking.
Yeah.
So until you have actually had that experience or have taken that type of bond, those type of bondages into account, those discomforts, not even a full experience.
Yeah.
You just making noise.
Right.
Like, and I I think in that, I think we're
Right.
worse because we've already had accounts of these experiences. We're living, post fact, and
Right.
you know there's no guess.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe we know, but we
Yeah.
still have the haughtiness to believe
Yeah. And there's a
with
lot of
experience.
examples which are like, you see like so-called liberal people saying, "Oh, why are they blocking that bridge or stopping people from getting to work? That's just going to hurt your cause." And it's like, sounds a lot to me like when MLK wrote those letters from the Birmingham jail, how he was
Yeah,
complaining about so-called liberals who are like, "We're with you in theory, but either just wait your turn or don't do too much because we're going to criticize what it takes to get to your freedom."
it's wild to me. We're fragile for better or worse as humans, and
Yeah.
sadly, I feel like we're at a time where we can't afford to be. You
Yeah.
know, there were points in the history of humanity where we earned that. We industrialized things, we mechanized things, technology developed, and we devolved.
Right. Right.
And now it's like that curve is done, and so
Yeah.
now when we need to have a certain type of fortitude, we're too soft in the middle.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
And we're soft here, and that's the scary part, you
Right.
know. um and it's a little bit not frightening. I think it's more disappointing.
Yeah. And then sometimes there's the unsubstantiated fears of technology and not getting ahead of it. Like at my work, I'm a steward in the union, and we fought to get ahead of the whole AI question and
Mm,
kind of have helped write into the contract that folks can't get laid off because of any AI, that folks can use it to
good.
take care of parts of their work
Hmm.
that it can be used for, and we can actually use that to reduce the number of hours folks are working without reducing their pay.
Oh,
Right.
wow.
So we're actually fighting for you know well, I'll just say hypothetically, because no
Mhm.
contract has come out yet, but hypothetically, we'd be fighting for a 4-day work week
Ah,
with the same exact pay as the quote unquote full work week. But part of that is incorporating AI and writing into it so that jobs won't be replaced. And if something happened with a job, they would find you like another job very adjacent to that job. And if
nice.
you didn't like the fact that there was going to be an adjacent job, then you would get like a good buyout, like in that case. So like thinking of all the scenarios, but getting ahead of technology instead of just being afraid of it and throwing pitchforks at it. And
Right.
I always joke that like when the wheel came out, people were probably afraid they were going to get rolled over, or they were going to take all the walking jobs, or that it would never work or something like that. That's always like the next technology.
It's true. I mean, if you look at man's relationship with technology from the early human history, you know, it's we've always met it with suspicion. I mean,
Yeah.
I was just studying very early this morning, like 2 o'clock this morning, and then it came back on TV. A little like this early afternoon. We got back from getting like firewood and stuff. Um, about distilling information and how that led to the the canon sort of reorganizing the Bible
Mm,
and sort of personifying the characterization of Satan.
mm.
And I know that sounds like really far reaching, but it's not. But and how these things are connected, and how we've always had this this conflicted nature of knowledge. And
Wait, so say more on the characterization of Satan.
well, it really depends on what school of thought you're coming from,
Okay.
as far as the origins or let's call it origin story
Okay.
of Satan, and his, and I mean his as a composite, uh,
Hmm.
sort of, his what's what I'm looking for, his goal, or
Okay.
objective, rather, his objective with humanity. And and some believe that the church at the split, as the early Christian church moved away from Gnosticism, that the early church uh vilified the idea of this angelic being, in a way to dumb people down, and
Interesting.
that his the original goal of that particular being, wherever you argue his the origin was to disseminate scientific knowledge.
Mm.
Story of one of the stories of the fallen angels, like the Enochian stories, um,
Okay.
was their relationship with early humanity, was an exchange of types of knowledge,
Mm.
because they adored human women.
Okay.
And then it gets into like the archons and stuff like that. But at any rate, um you have a whole school of people who believe that um that's the cost of knowledge was the price, the garden price.
Mm,
No.
right.
Oh, want this? All right, you gotta leave paradise.
Interesting.
And
And is that like you think that's like a ignorance is as bliss metaphor?
if you were to boil it down, like to bare bones, um, I wouldn't. I want to say that, but I can't because I
Okay.
know it's more sophisticated than that.
Okay.
Um, and I could say this that I do see the comfort of I do see the ecstasy of blind trust. I
Right.
can understand that. I can completely see the ease, and I can completely see the the I completely see being in a state of divine ignorance where you just are existing, which is kind of the point. Which is, if
Mm,
you look at some religious traditions, you sort of evolve into the point of just being, right?
okay.
Of just
Hmm.
and in your time in dealing in this realm of being a human, you spend most of your time navigating polarities, right?
Mm,
And so imagine not.
right.
Now, you can imagine not, but it's very hard to exist not unless you live in isolation, and even then, in dealing with the frailty of a body, you're still battling in the physical sense polarities
Right.
because you have to
Well,
survive.
well, I
So
mean, people often like how often do people not want to hear, what Coca-Cola has done to lives and like Southern American countries, like killing people trying to unionize and stuff like that. It's like, let me just drink my Coke, or let me just eat my meat without, worrying about, the immense suffering that's gone on in factory farms, or, let me criticize Michael Vick, but not realize that, like, every bite I'm taking of a burger is like doing something that's the same or worse. So it's kind of like, seems like kind of similar. If you don't eat of that fruit, you can continue,
well,
just being without
yeah,
worrying.
yeah, well, that's even moral. Take it outside and make it practical. I want to eat a burger and I don't want to worry about getting fat. Or I
Mm,
eat a lot of burgers and I don't want to
mm.
worry about high cholesterol. Like practical
Right, right, right. Yeah,
morality.
yeah. Sure, sure, for
It's
sure.
it's at the conscious of your own that you could make yourself very ill. But
Right.
you know, so it could be
Mm,
something that's not meat, I guess.
yeah.
But
So,
but yeah,
oh, sorry. Go ahead. Oh, I was just gonna say, just another funny concept I have is like, speaking of like Satan and the way that it's been construed or used, and maybe like our discussion on unions. I always joke that like Satan was an organizer, and he was thrown out of heaven for trying to organize like the other angels, and there was union busting happening because he didn't like that. You know, uh, the workers or the angels didn't have input, and that there was just like one source of where all the authority was coming from. So he was cast out.
I can see that. I do believe that there are. I'm in an interesting place in sort of sifting through that in my mind of, and that's a hilarious analogy, but but I do believe there are rankings of these entities, and I believe as most common people, the way the average person recognizes it, it's a composition of
Yeah.
several. I don't think it's that flat of a being by any
Mm.
means, and I think the situation of it is incredibly sophisticated in a way that everything ends up feeding itself. Um, even at that if you do regard it as a hyperpolarity, right?
Yeah.
I do,
Yeah.
but at the same time, in doing it such a huge service, I believe we've done humanity a big disservice, because we're the majority of humanity is really unarmed
Hmm.
for for to endure these great sort of swings.
Yeah.
The universe, I believe, was divinely designed for a type of balance that, in consistently trying to stay in a pleasure that's unachievable until you're just at a point of divine existence, that we've pushed it too far to where we did not want to be.
Right.
Again, because we're so reliant on a sensory experience.
Hmm.
And if I were to say there was a garden price of admission or getting booted, that's it. Like, and in that way, I feel we were left very unarmed for it, because, again, I believe that battle is all here, and
Right. Right.
equally so.
Right.
And man, that part makes me, I don't know, it's not good. I
Yeah. Right. Well, I think that's a great place to end, unless you have anything else to say. I think that was a great kind of off the cuff discussion. That was
What?
pretty dope. Yeah, pretty
No,
dope.
talk about that forever. But yeah,
Cool. All right. Well, hopefully we'll have been able to see the Book of Clearance by the next time we come together, because that would be fun to discuss. Be a
absolutely.
nice continuation.
Yes. Is it
Yeah.
in theaters now?
Yes. Yep. It's in theaters. Yep. It's
Hey,
in theaters. Yep.
cool. I would love to talk about this some more.
Cool. Cool. All right. So don't forget to, I guess, leave this on in your tab for a while,
All right.
so we can make sure the recordings record. And yeah, thanks a lot, Shika. This is F Designer signing off. And until next time,
Bye.
peace.